"Get your hands off my property, you filthy vagrant." Those were the first words Arthur Vance ever spoke to me. They would also be the last. He didn't know that the property he was so vehemently protecting, the shimmering, billion-dollar Ethelgard Grand Miami, was not his. It was mine. Every pane of hurricane-proof glass, every hand-laid marble tile, every thread in the $1,000-a-night linens bore the invisible imprint of my life's work. He saw a black woman in a simple maintenance uniform, a stray detail in the perfect portrait he was paid to manage. He didn't see Dr. Alani Taylor, founder and CEO of Ethelgard Hotels Worldwide, the woman who had built a global empire from the dust of her ancestors' dreams. He didn't see the woman who signed his six-figure paycheck. As his security guards dragged me across the lobby I had designed, a lobby inspired by the Yoruba concept of ash, the power to make things happen, I didn't feel rage. I felt a cold, calculating calm. Arthur Vance was about to learn the true meaning of that word. He was about to experience, in the most public and catastrophic way imaginable, the ash he had so foolishly provoked. The grand opening was in 3 days. He thought he was clearing out the trash. He had no idea he was about to become it. My story doesn't begin in that gleaming Miami lobby. It begins in a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment in Detroit's Brewster Douglas projects. It begins with the scent of my grandmother's collard greens and the sound of her stories. She was a hotel maid for 40 years at one of the city's finest downtown hotels. She was one of the invisible people, the ones who scrubbed the toilets and changed the sheets for the powerful, the wealthy, the white. She'd come home, her back aching and her hands raw from cleaning chemicals, and tell me about the world she saw. She spoke of the breathtaking chandeliers, the plush carpets, the way the light hit the crystal glasses in the dining room. But she also spoke of the indignities, the guests who wouldn't make eye contact, who left rooms in states of utter filth, who treated her as if she were part of the furniture. She once told me about a guest who, upon finding my grandmother cleaning his room, tossed a quarter on the floor and said, "Here, go buy yourself a soda, Mammy." She was 57 years old. She never complained, not really. She saw her work as a noble service, a way to provide for her family. But I saw the fire in her eyes when she told those stories. It was a banked fire, one she couldn't afford to let burn freely, but it ignited something in me. I swore to myself, in that small apartment filled with the smell of greens and quiet dignity, that I would one day build a place so magnificent it would make that downtown hotel look like a roadside motel. And in my place, the people who did the work, the people like my grandmother, would be honored. They would be seen. They would be respected. That quiet vow became the engine of my life. I was a scholarship kid. I devoured books. I studied business, architecture, and hospitality management. I got my bachelor's from Howard, my MBA from Wharton, and my doctorate in global business strategy from Stanford. My dissertation was on the socio-economic impact of ethically conscious luxury hospitality. I worked every job in the industry to learn it from the inside out. I was a concierge, a line cook, a front desk manager, a night auditor. I saved every penny. I wrote a business plan that was rejected by 37 different banks. The 38th, a small community bank in Philadelphia run by a man who had also been told no his whole life, finally gave me a chance. My first hotel was a small, boutique property in a revitalized Philadelphia neighborhood. I called it the Ethelgard, an old English name meaning noble protector. The concept was simple but revolutionary, 5-star luxury, with 5-star ethics. Every employee, from the housekeepers to the general manager, was a salaried partner with full benefits, profit sharing, and a voice in how the hotel was run. We sourced everything locally. We invested in the community. The critics said it was a naive, socialist fantasy that would go bankrupt in 6 months. They were wrong. Within a year, we were the top-rated hotel in the city. The profits were staggering. From there, the empire grew. The Ethelgard London, the Ethelgard Tokyo, the Ethelgard Dubai, each one was a masterpiece of design and a testament to our core values. I built a multi-billion-dollar global brand, and I did it my way. I became Dr. Alani Taylor, the titan of hospitality, the woman on the cover of Forbes and Fortune. But I never forgot the promise I made in that Detroit apartment. Before any new Ethelgard hotel opened its doors to the public, I would spend the final week on site, working alongside the new staff, undercover. I'd wear the uniforms, housekeeping, maintenance, kitchen staff to see the operation from the ground up. to ensure the Ethelgrid promise was a reality, not just a marketing slogan. It was my most sacred tradition, which brought me to Miami. The Ethelgrid Grand Miami was my magnum opus. A 70-story, $2 billion monument to resilience and beauty, built on a piece of prime beachfront property. It was the culmination of everything I had ever worked for. The grand opening gala was set to be the event of the year, with A-list celebrities, international dignitaries, and the world's press in attendance. For the week leading up to it, I was Lonnie, a new hire on the maintenance crew, assigned to the pre-opening final touches team. My executive team knew, of course, as did my head of global security, a formidable ex-Secret Service agent named Marcus Thorne, who was discreetly on site, posing as a consultant. To everyone else, I was just another worker. The general manager of the Miami property was Arthur Vance. He was a new hire to the Ethelgrid family, and I'd had my reservations from the start. His resume was impeccable. He'd managed 5-star properties in New York and Paris. But during his final interview with me via video call, something felt off. He was too slick, too polished. He used all the right corporate buzzwords about diversity and inclusion, but his eyes were cold. He complimented me on being so articulate, a microaggression so common I almost let it slide. But I didn't. I flagged his file. I told my chief operating officer, a brilliant woman named Elena Ramirez, that Vance's appointment was provisional. He was on a 90-day probationary period, and the final sign-off would depend on my personal assessment. My undercover week was that assessment. On the 3rd day of my inspection, I was dressed in a standard issue gray maintenance jumpsuit, my hair tucked under a baseball cap. I was checking the grout work in the main lobby, a soaring, 3-story atrium with a breathtaking chandelier made of 10,000 hand-blown glass shells. I had knelt down to examine a section near the grand entrance, my toolkit beside me. The lobby was a controlled chaos of final preparations. Florists were arranging massive bouquets, technicians were testing the sound system, and a few pre-approved journalists were being given a guided tour. That's when I saw him. Arthur Vance was striding through the lobby like a Roman emperor, pointing and barking orders. He was a tall, imposing man in his late 50s, with silver hair and a permanent sneer etched onto his face. He was berating a young Latina housekeeper because her cart was, in his opinion, 3 inches too far to the left. The girl was on the verge of tears. I made a mental note. This was not the Ethelgrid way. His eyes then landed on me, a black woman in a maintenance uniform, kneeling in the center of his pristine marble floor. He marched over, his expensive Italian shoes clicking in angry rhythm. His head of security, a burly sycophant named Carl Simmons, followed in his wake. What do you think you're doing? Vance's voice was a whip crack of entitled authority. I remained kneeling, looking up at him. My voice was calm and even. I'm inspecting the grout, sir. Section 4B. Making sure it's properly sealed before the final polish. He stared down at me as if I were a cockroach. I did not give you permission to be in my lobby. This area is restricted to approved personnel. I'm on the final touches team. I explained patiently. My supervisor, Mr. Henderson, assigned me this section. I don't care if God himself assigned you this section, Vance spat. You are making a mess and getting in the way. The press is here. I want this floor clear. Now. I began to slowly gather my tools. I wasn't moving fast enough for him. This was a test. I needed to see how far he would go. Sir, I'm almost finished. If you'll just give me 5 more minutes, I can complete the sealant application. And he cut me off. Are you deaf? Or just stupid? I said no. He then did something that crossed a line from unprofessional to criminal. He kicked my toolkit, sending wrenches and scrapers skittering across the marble. One of them slid and struck the shoe of one of the journalists, who looked over in alarm. I stood up slowly, my eyes locked on his. I was no longer kneeling. We were face to face. There's no need for that, sir. My defiance seemed to enrage him. His face contorted, turning a blotchy red. You have a lot of nerve, talking back to me. You people always do. You think the rules don't apply to you. He jabbed a finger in my chest, making contact. You don't belong here. Security Chief Simmons stepped forward. Is there a problem, Vance? Yes, there's a problem, Vance snarled, never taking his eyes off me. We have a trespasser. She's refusing to leave. The lie was so blatant, so audacious, it was almost impressive. The 2 journalists were now watching intently, their phones subtly angled in our direction. A group of new bellhops and concierge trainees had stopped their work to stare. "I am not a trespasser," I said, my voice dangerously low. "I am an employee of this hotel. My name is Lonnie." Vance laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. "Lonnie, I'll remember that name when I'm having you arrested." He turned to Simmons. "Get her out of my hotel. And I mean now." Simmons, eager to please his boss, grabbed my arm. His grip was rough, bruising. I didn't resist. I allowed myself to become dead weight, forcing him to struggle. This was all being recorded on at least 4 different high-definition security cameras. Cameras that I had personally specified, whose feeds went directly to a secure cloud server at Ethelgard headquarters in New York. "Let's go," Simmons grunted, trying to pull me toward the door. Vance watched with a look of smug satisfaction. As we passed a service station, he picked up a tall glass of ice water from a tray. "She looks thirsty," he said to the horrified trainees watching. And with a flick of his wrist, he tossed the entire contents of the glass in my face. Ice-cold water and cubes of ice cascaded down my head and chest, soaking my jumpsuit, dripping from my chin. A collective gasp went through the lobby. The journalists' phones were no longer subtle. They were held up, openly recording. Vance leaned in close. His voice a venomous whisper meant only for me, but it was picked up perfectly by the tiny microphone hidden in the pen in my breast pocket. "Get your hands off my property, you filthy vagrant, and if I ever see your face here again, you'll be leaving in the back of a police car." Simmons, with the help of another guard, literally dragged me the last 20 feet to the massive glass entrance doors. They shoved me out onto the hot Miami sidewalk. My toolkit, my baseball cap, and my employee ID were thrown out after me, landing in a puddle on the curb. The glass doors hissed shut, leaving me on the outside, looking in at the magnificent lobby of the hotel I had built, dripping and humiliated, with the smirking face of Arthur Vance staring back at me. He thought he had won. He thought he had put an insignificant black woman in her place. He had no idea that he had just signed his own career death warrant, and the ink was my humiliation. I stood up, brushed myself off, and pulled out my personal cell phone. My first call was not to the police. It was to Elena Ramirez, my crew in New York. "Elena," I said, my voice shaking not with fear, but with a cold, controlled fury. "Clear the board schedule. I want an emergency virtual meeting in 1 hour. Subject, a catastrophic security and leadership failure at the Miami property. And Patch and legal. I'm going to need them." The hour that followed was a masterclass in corporate warfare, executed with the precision of a special forces operation. While I sat in a nearby cafe, still in my damp jumpsuit, my team at the Ethelgard headquarters in New York moved with blistering speed. Elena Ramirez, my crew, was a whirlwind of efficiency. She was the daughter of immigrants, a woman who had fought her way to the top just as I had, and she understood instinctively what was at stake. She scheduled the emergency board meeting for precisely 1 hour after the incident, a time frame designed to give Arthur Vance just enough rope to hang himself. My second call was to Marcus Thorne, my head of global security, who was still inside the hotel. "Marcus, it's me. Status. I have eyes on you, boss." His voice was a low rumble in my ear. He was across the street, watching from an unmarked car. "I have the whole thing from 3 angles, including Vance's racist whisper. It's gold-plated." "Good," I said. "I need you to do 2 things. First, get into the hotel's main security office. Use your executive override. I want every frame of footage from every camera in that lobby for the last 30 minutes downloaded and sent to my secure server. No gaps. No excuses. I want audio from every microphone. Second, I need you to quietly pull the complete personnel files for Arthur Vance and Carl Simmons. I don't just want their Ethelgard file. I want the full background checks we ran, the ones with the notes from their previous employers. Send it all to my legal team. Now, consider it done," Marcus said. "You want me to have a chat with Vance?" The question was calm, but I could hear the undercurrent of violence. Marcus was fiercely loyal. "No," I said firmly. "He's not to be touched. He's about to walk into a digital buzzsaw. Let him do it with that smug look still on his face. I want the board to see it." My third and final call was to Julian Croft, my chief legal officer. Julian was a bulldog, a Harvard law graduate who had made his name taking on corporate giants. "Julian, you're about to receive a package from Marcus. Video, audio, personnel files. I want you and your team to dissect it. I want a full legal workup on Vance and Simmons. Assault, wrongful termination, emotional distress, violation of Ethelgard's code of conduct, the works. And I want you to run a new, deep dive financial audit on Vance's tenures at his previous two hotels. I have a feeling that a man who treats people this way is also comfortable stealing. Alani, are you okay? Julian's voice was sharp with concern. I'm fine, Julian. More than fine. I'm focused. Get it done. You're on the board call in 50 minutes. Meanwhile, inside the Ethelgard Grand Miami, Arthur Vance was preening. He felt powerful, decisive. He had, in his mind, neutralized a threat and demonstrated his unwavering commitment to maintaining the hotel's exclusive atmosphere. He immediately called for a meeting with his senior staff to review security protocols. In reality, it was a victory lap. He told them the story, embellishing it with each telling. The woman had been aggressive, unstable, possibly on drugs. He had de-escalated the situation and protected the hotel's reputation. He then made a crucial, arrogant mistake. Believing he had the full support of the board, he decided to get ahead of the story. He drafted an email to the entire executive board of Ethelgard Worldwide. Subject: Urgent Security Incident and Proactive Response. The email began, "Dear board members, I am writing to inform you of a minor, but significant security breach that occurred this morning at our flagship Miami property. An unauthorized individual, posing as a maintenance worker, gained access to the main lobby during a sensitive press preview. The individual became aggressive and belligerent when confronted. With the safety of our guests, staff, and our brand's reputation as my top priority, I personally intervened and had the individual swiftly and professionally removed from the premises by our security team. This incident highlights the need for the stringent security measures I have implemented. I have attached my preliminary incident report and will be available to discuss this matter further at your convenience. Rest assured, the Ethelgard Grand Miami is secure under my leadership. Sincerely, Arthur Vance." The preliminary incident report he attached was a work of pure fiction. It was a 2-page document detailing how Jane Doe, an unidentified black female, had been acting erratically, muttering threats, and had lunged at him when he approached. It claimed he had used minimum necessary force to neutralize the threat. He had his security chief, Carl Simmons, co-sign it. He hit send, sealing his fate. 30 minutes later, he received the calendar invitation from Elena Ramirez's office. Mandatory emergency board meeting. Vance smiled. His proactive email had worked. The board was taking him seriously. They wanted to commend him for his decisive action. He straightened his tie, smoothed his silver hair, and walked into his multi-million-dollar office suite, the one I had personally designed, to join the video call. He was about to give the performance of his life, directly to the woman he had assaulted. The video conference began with 12 faces in small boxes on the screen. The Ethelgard board was a diverse group of industry leaders I had handpicked over the years. There was retired Senator Thompson, financial guru Kenji Tanaka, and marketing visionary Isabella Rossi among them. Arthur Vance's face was in one box, looking confident and composed. Carl Simmons was in another, looking slightly more nervous. My box was there, but my camera was off, my name displayed simply as A. Taylor. Vance, in his arrogance, likely assumed it was an assistant or an aide. Elena Ramirez began the meeting. "Thank you for joining on such short notice. We are here to discuss a serious incident reported by Mr. Vance at the Miami property this morning. Arthur, the floor is yours." Vance launched into his well-rehearsed narrative, his voice dripping with false sincerity and gravitas. "Thank you, Elena. Members of the board, as you know, my primary responsibility is to protect the integrity and security of the Ethelgard brand. This morning, we faced a direct threat to that integrity." He proceeded to recount the fabricated story from his report, adding new, more dramatic details. The woman, he now claimed, was clearly casing the lobby for theft. He said she had profanely cursed at him and had raised her hand to strike him. He painted a picture of a dangerous, unhinged intruder and himself as the calm, heroic leader who had saved the day. "I had to make a split-second decision," Vance said, his face a mask of solemn duty. "Do I allow this unstable individual to potentially harm our guests, our staff, or the journalists we had invited for a preview, thereby creating a PR nightmare? Or do I act decisively to neutralize the threat?" I chose to act. Some board members nodded, their faces showing concern. They had no reason to doubt him yet. He was the highly credentialed manager they had approved. My head of security, Carl Simmons, can corroborate the entire event," Vance said, gesturing for Simmons to speak. Simmons, reading from a script Vance had likely prepared for him, chimed in. "Yes, board members. I witnessed the entire incident. The individual was highly aggressive. Vance showed incredible restraint. His actions were by the book and absolutely necessary to ensure the safety of the hotel. For 20 minutes, they built their fortress of lies, brick by painstaking brick. They were confident, professional, and utterly convincing." Vance concluded his presentation with a flourish. "This incident, while unfortunate, has proven that our security protocols are effective. I am confident that we are more than ready for the grand opening. The safety of the Ethelgard Grand Miami is, and always will be, my #1 priority." A heavy silence fell over the virtual meeting room. Then, Elena Ramirez spoke, her voice neutral. "Thank you, Arthur, Carl. We appreciate your detailed report." She paused. "Before we open the floor to questions, there is one other person who was present for the incident who would like to address the board." Vance's confident smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Another person? Who?" "One of the trainees." "Not exactly," Elena said. "Dr. Taylor, are you ready?" My name hung in the air. Vance's eyes widened. He scanned the names on the participant list, his face turning pale as he saw a Taylor. And then, I turned on my camera. I was still in the cafe, still in the damp, water-stained maintenance jumpsuit. The cheap baseball cap was on the table in front of me. I looked directly into my phone's camera, my face bruised with exhaustion, but my eyes burning with an intensity that seemed to leap through the screen. The reaction was instantaneous. The board members gasped. Kenji Tanaka literally dropped his pen. Isabella Rossi brought a hand to her mouth. But their shock was nothing compared to the look on Arthur Vance's face. The color drained from it completely. His jaw went slack. His eyes bulged in a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He looked as if he had seen a ghost in a maintenance uniform, holding his entire world in her hands. I let the silence stretch for a full 10 seconds, forcing him to stew in the horror of his realization. Then, I spoke, my voice quiet, controlled, and utterly devastating. "Hello, Arthur," I said. "You were just describing your interaction with me. Please, continue. I'm finding your version of events fascinating." The fortress of lies that Arthur Vance had so carefully constructed over the past hour crumbled to dust in a single, silent moment of recognition. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a waxy, pallid mask of sheer terror. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air, his mind frantically trying to reconcile the image of the filthy vagrant he'd brutalized with the face of the billionaire CEO now staring at him from his computer screen. I did not give him the mercy of a quick execution. I was going to dismantle him, piece by painstaking piece, using the very corporate tools he believed he had mastered. "Members of the board," I began, my voice as calm and measured as if I were delivering a quarterly earnings report. "I apologize for my appearance. As you can see, I've had a rather eventful morning. Vance was kind enough to provide me with a complimentary beverage service, though I must say, the delivery method leaves something to be desired." A few of the board members managed a choked laugh, breaking the tension. Vance, however, looked like he was about to have a stroke. "Arthur," I said, my tone shifting from wry to ice cold, "you testified to this board that I was a trespasser." "Let's address that first. Elena, would you please share screen 1? An image filled the virtual meeting room. It was a high-resolution scan of my Ethelgard Global Employee ID card. My picture smiled out from the plastic. My name, Dr. Alani Taylor. My title, founder and CEO. My employee number, 00001. As you can see, I continued, I am, in fact, an employee. The very first employee, to be precise. My presence in the lobby this morning was not only authorized, it was part of a tradition I have maintained for every hotel opening for the past 20 years. The founder's final inspection, a tradition detailed in the executive onboarding manual you were required to read and sign. Do you recall signing that document, Arthur? Vance could only manage a weak, pathetic nod, his eyes darting around the screen as if looking for an escape route that didn't exist. "Good," I said. "Now, let's move on to your assertion that I was aggressive, belligerent, and that I lunged at you. These are serious accusations, thankfully. In the interest of the very security you claim to champion, I insisted that the Miami property be outfitted with the most advanced, Surveillance system on the market. Elena, please share screen 2, and please enable audio. The screen changed again. This time, it was a 4-way split-screen view of the lobby, showing the entire incident from 4 different angles in crystal clear 4K resolution. The audio was so crisp, you could hear the software of the floor polishing machines in the background. The board watched in stunned silence as the real events unfolded. They saw me, kneeling peacefully, inspecting the floor. They saw Vance march up to me, his posture aggressive and hostile. They heard his voice, laced with contempt. Are you deaf? Or just stupid? They saw him kick my toolkit. They saw him jab his finger into my chest. They saw him order his security chief to remove me. And then, they saw the water. They saw him douse me, the ice cubes bouncing off my shoulders, as he leaned in and whispered his parting words. The system was so sensitive it had picked up every syllable. Get your hands off my property, you filthy vagrant. When the video ended, the silence in the virtual room was deafening. It was the silence of utter shock and revulsion. Isabella Rossi had tears in her eyes. Senator Thompson's face was a thundercloud of fury. Arthur, I said into the silence, my voice deceptively soft, the video evidence appears to directly contradict your sworn testimony to this board. It also appears to contradict the official incident report you and Mr. Simmons signed and submitted. An incident report that is a legal document. Submitting a fraudulent report is a violation of not only company policy, but potentially several state and federal laws. Julian, I said, turning my attention to my chief legal officer, could you perhaps enlighten Mr. Vance on the potential legal ramifications of filing a false report related to an assault? Julian Croft, who had been waiting for his cue, leaned into his camera. His face was grim. Certainly. Drive.Taylor.Mer. Vance, what you have done constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud. Given that your report was transmitted electronically across state lines to our board members, it also falls under the federal wire fraud statute, which carries a penalty of up to 20 years in prison. And that's before we even get to the perjury charges for lying to this board, and the criminal charges for the assault itself, which, given your position of authority, could be enhanced. Carl Simmons, the security chief, looked like he was going to be physically ill. He unmuted his microphone, his voice a desperate squeak. I was just following orders. He told me to write it, Mr. Simmons. I cut him off, my voice like a whip. Your cowardice is as contemptible as his bigotry. You had a duty to protect all employees, not just the ones who look like you. You failed. I turned my attention back to the man at the center of the storm. But this isn't just about one violent, racist outburst, is it, Arthur? Men like you don't just snap. This is a pattern, a deeply ingrained part of who you are, which is why, an hour ago, I authorized a deep dive investigation into your professional history. Elena, screen 3, please. A new document filled the screen. It was Arthur Vance's personal file from the 5-star hotel he had managed in New York before we hired him. Red boxes were highlighted throughout the document. This is your file from your previous employer, I explained. It seems our initial background check, which you passed, was not as thorough as it should have been. A failure in our system I intend to correct. This more detailed report, however, paints a very different picture. It details 5 separate HR complaints filed against you by employees of color. Let me read you some highlights. I began to read from the screen. Complaint from Ms. Maria Flores, housekeeper, alleges Mr. Vance referred to the Hispanic kitchen staff as the Burrito Brigade. Investigation, inconclusive. Complaint from Mr. David Chen, concierge, alleges Mr. Vance told him to go back to his country after a scheduling dispute. Investigation, unsubstantiated. Complaint from Ms. Simone Dubois, front desk manager, a black woman. She alleges that during her performance review, Mr. Vance told her she was too aggressive and lacked the soft skills for senior management, despite her having the highest customer satisfaction rating in the entire hotel. He then promoted a less qualified white man over her. The company settled with Ms. Dubois for an undisclosed sum to avoid a lawsuit. I looked up from the file. There are 2 more just like it. Arthur. A clear, documented pattern of racist and misogynistic behavior that you have skillfully managed to suppress your entire career. You see, powerful white men like you have always been protected by a system that is designed to dismiss, discredit, and silence voices like Maria's, David's, and Simone's. But you made a fatal error this morning, Arthur. You tried to silence a voice that owns the microphone. I wasn't finished. The avalanche was just beginning. And then, there's the matter of your financial integrity. A man who holds others in such contempt often feels entitled to more than his fair share. Julian, what did our preliminary audit find? Julian Croft's face was grim. It's still ongoing, Dr. Taylor, but we've already found significant discrepancies. Over the last 2 years at his previous post, Mr. Vance's approved expenditures for miscellaneous hotel supplies were 300% higher than any other hotel in that company's portfolio. We've cross-referenced those payments and found they went to a shell corporation, registered to his brother-in-law's home address. We believe Mr. Vance has embezzled over $500,000. The final nail was in the coffin. Vance was not just a racist and a bully. He was a common thief. He finally broke. All the polish, the arrogance, the condescension, it all melted away, leaving behind a pathetic, trembling shell of a man. Please, he whispered, the word barely audible. Dr. Taylor Alani, please. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I am not that man. I was under pressure. The opening. I held up a hand to silence him. A mistake, Arthur? A mistake is when you spill coffee on your tie. A mistake is when you forget to return a phone call. What you did was not a mistake. It was a choice. It was a reflection of your character. A character steeped in a rotten ideology that sees people who look like me as less than human. You didn't see a maintenance worker. You didn't even see a woman. You saw a vagrant, a filthy animal to be discarded. You looked at me and saw my grandmother. The words hung in the air, filled with the weight of generations of quiet suffering. You said you were protecting your lobby, your hotel. I continued, my voice now shaking with a righteous anger I no longer tried to contain. Let me be clear. You are a temporary manager, a hired hand. This is not your hotel. It is my hotel. It is Elena's hotel. It is Marcus's hotel. It is the hotel of the young woman you brought to tears this morning over the placement of her cart. We built this. We, the people you disdain, the people you dismiss, the people you think you have the right to assault. We built this from nothing. I leaned in close to my camera, making sure he could see the fire in my eyes. So, no, Arthur, I will not accept your pathetic, self-serving apology. You are not sorry for what you did. You are only sorry that you did it to me. I turned my attention to the entire board. Members of the board, this morning has been a painful but necessary lesson. We had a cancer in our organization, a cancer of bigotry, an entitlement that is antithetical to everything the Ethelgrid stands for. And when you find cancer, you do not reason with it. You do not negotiate with it. You cut it out. I took a deep breath. Arthur Vance, your employment with Ethelgrid Hotels Worldwide is terminated, effective immediately. Carl Simmons, you are also terminated, effective immediately. You will be escorted from the property. Your final paychecks will be mailed to you. You are to have no further contact with any Ethelgrid employee. I looked at Julian. Julian, I want criminal charges filed against Mr. Vance for assault. I also want our legal team to launch a full civil suit against him personally to recover the funds he embezzled and for the reputational damage he has caused this company. I want you to ruin him. I want to make an example of him so that no one ever dares to think they can bring this kind of poison into my house again. Then, I delivered the final, crushing blow. And Arthur, I said, my voice dropping back to that deceptively soft tone, the grand opening gala is in 3 days. The theme, as you know, is a celebration of excellence. I am rescinding your invitation, but don't worry. I'll be sure to send you a photo from the red carpet. After all, you helped me pick out my outfit this morning. I clicked leave meeting, plunging his terrified face into darkness. The execution was complete. The moments following the call were a blur of decisive action. From the cafe in Miami, I became the conductor of a global orchestra of consequence. My instructions were precise, my resolve absolute. The first order of business was the physical removal of Vance and Simmons from my property. Marcus Thorne, who had been listening to the entire board meeting from his surveillance vehicle, received the green light from me via text message, execute. Within 90 seconds, Marcus, accompanied by 2 of his most imposing security specialists, both former Special Forces operatives, who now worked for my corporate security team, strode into Arthur Vance's office. Vance was still sitting at his desk, staring blankly at the screen where my face had been, when the door opened. He looked up to see 3 grim-faced men in dark suits fill the doorway. Mr. Vance, Marcus said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that left no room for argument. "Dr. Taylor has instructed me to inform you that your employment has been terminated. Please gather your personal belongings. You will be escorted off the premises immediately." Vance, still in shock, could only stammer, You can't. This is my office. This is Dr. Taylor's office," Marcus corrected him calmly. "You were merely borrowing it. You have 5 minutes." The same scene played out in the security office with Carl Simmons, who, upon seeing Marcus's team, immediately began to blubber, pleading for his job, for a second chance. His pleas fell on deaf ears. They were given cardboard boxes for their personal effects, a few family photos, a coffee mug, a desk plant. They were then escorted, one guard in front and one behind, through the back hallways of the hotel, down a service elevator, and out a rear loading dock. They were not afforded the dignity of leaving through the grand lobby they had so recently commanded. As Vance was being led out, a uniformed Miami-Dade police officer was waiting for him. One of my legal aides had already filed the official assault complaint. Arthur Vance, the man who hours earlier had been the king of a $2 billion castle, was read his rights and placed in the back of a police cruiser, his final exit from the Ethelgard Grand marked by the quiet click of handcuffs. Simultaneously, in New York, Julian Croft's legal department unleashed a firestorm. A team of forensic accountants was dispatched to Miami to seize all financial records. From Vance's office, another team began drafting the multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit. Julian personally contacted the district attorney's office, providing them with the high-definition video of the assault and a full witness list, ensuring the criminal case would be fast-tracked and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. He also contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office regarding the wire fraud and embezzlement charges. By the end of the day, Arthur Vance was facing a legal battle on 3 fronts: criminal, civil, and federal, that would bankrupt him and likely send him to prison for a very long time. My next move was to control the narrative. The 2 journalists who had witnessed the incident were from major publications. Their stories would break soon. I decided to get ahead of it, not by hiding, but by owning it completely. I called a press conference for the following morning, to be held in the very lobby where the assault had occurred. Then, I addressed the staff. Elena Ramirez, my crew, flew to Miami on my private jet, arriving that evening. Together, we called an all-hands meeting for every single employee of the Ethelgard Grand Miami, from the department heads to the dishwashers. I stood before them, not in a suit, but in a simple dress, the fading bruise on my arm from Simmons's grip visible to all. I told them everything. I told them about the incident, not in anger, but as a teachable moment. I told them about my grandmother. I told them why I founded Ethelgard and what our core values meant. "The name Ethelgard means noble protector," I said, my voice echoing in the cavernous ballroom. "Our mission is to protect the dignity of every person who walks through our doors, whether they are a paying guest or a member of our team. Yesterday, that mission was violated. It was violated by a man who saw a uniform, not a person, who saw skin color, not character. That man and his enablers are gone, and I promise you, that kind of poison will never find a home in this company again." I then announced the promotion of the young Latina housekeeper Vance had berated. I had my team pull her file. She was a recent hospitality school graduate with stellar recommendations. I promoted her to a junior management training program, effective immediately. I also announced that every hourly employee would be receiving a grand opening bonus, equal to 1 month's salary, as a sign of the company's commitment to the people who truly made it run. The room erupted in applause, not just of gratitude, but of renewed pride and loyalty. The culture of fear Vance had begun to cultivate was exercised in that moment, replaced by the culture of respect I had always intended. The press conference the next morning was a global media event. I stood at a podium in the lobby, the magnificent shell chandelier glittering above me. I did not mince words. I played the video of the assault on a massive screen for all the world to see. I laid out the facts, the history of Vance's behavior, and the actions we had taken. This was not an isolated incident, I told the assembled reporters. This was a symptom of a systemic disease of prejudice that infects all corners of our society, from the street corner to the corporate boardroom. The only thing that made this incident different is that it happened to a CEO who had the power to deliver immediate and unwavering accountability. But my power should not be the exception. It should be the rule. Every victim of racism, sexism, and abuse deserves to be heard, believed, and vindicated. It was there that I announced the creation of the Ethelgard Mandate. It was a new, industry-shaking set of corporate policies. It included a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind, with immediate termination as the only outcome. It established a new, independent ethics and compliance office, to which any employee could report abuse anonymously and without fear of reprisal. It mandated comprehensive, ongoing anti-bias and de-escalation training for every employee, from the C-suite down. And most significantly, I announced the creation of the Dignity and Hospitality Fund, a $100 million foundation, personally endowed by me, to provide grants and mentorship to minority and women entrepreneurs trying to break into the hospitality industry. The story exploded. It was the lead item on every news network. Hashtag #IStandWithAlani and hashtag #AETHELGARD mandate trended worldwide. Instead of a PR disaster, the incident became a defining moment for my brand. We were no longer just a luxury hotel chain. We were a symbol of corporate courage and ethical leadership. Bookings at our hotels around the world surged. We were inundated with applications from the best and brightest in the industry, all wanting to work for a company that truly lived its values. The grand opening gala took place 2 days later as scheduled, but its tone had transformed. It was no longer just a lavish party. It was a celebration of resilience, respect, and a new future for the hospitality industry. I walked the red carpet not in a designer gown, but in a simple, elegant black dress, a tribute to the quiet dignity of my grandmother. In my speech that night, I did not talk about profit margins or market share. I talked about her. I talked about the promise I had made as a little girl in a Detroit housing project. Welcome to the Ethelgard Grand Miami, I concluded, raising a glass to the cheering crowd, a place where every guest is treated like royalty, and every employee is treated with the honor they deserve. This is not just a building of glass and steel. This is a monument to the idea that true luxury is not about what you have, but about how you treat people. This is my grandmother's house, and in her house, everyone is welcome, and everyone is seen. As for Arthur Vance, his downfall was as swift as it was absolute. Facing a mountain of undeniable evidence, he was convicted of assault and sentenced to 2 years in prison. The federal case for fraud and embezzlement resulted in another 7-year sentence. He was financially ruined by our civil suit, forced to pay back every penny he had stolen, and then some. He lost his home, his reputation, and his freedom. He became a case study in business schools, a cautionary tale of how arrogance and prejudice can lead to ruin. His name became a synonym for corporate disgrace. He was never a king in a castle. He was just a petty thief and a bigot who made the fatal mistake of trying to bully the wrong woman. He learned that in my house, the foundation is built on respect, and the walls are strong enough to withstand any storm, especially the storms of hate. The 6 months that followed the grand opening were a period of profound transformation, not just for my company, but for the entire hospitality industry. The Ethelgard Mandate was no longer just an internal policy. It became a gold standard. Other major hotel chains, under pressure from the public and their own employees, began to announce similar initiatives. The ripple effect was tangible. We had started a revolution from the top down. The Dignity and Hospitality Fund, which I had endowed with $100 million of my own money, began distributing its first round of grants. We funded a brilliant young black chef's dream of opening a farm-to-table restaurant in New Orleans. We backed a Latina entrepreneur's plan to launch an eco-friendly boutique hotel in Costa Rica. We provided seed money for a software company founded by 2 women of color that was developing a new, unbiased HR platform for the service industry. We weren't just writing checks. We were building a new ecosystem of leadership that reflected the real world. At the Ethelgard Grand Miami, the culture shift was palpable. The young housekeeper I had promoted, Maria, blossomed in the management training program. She had a natural talent for leadership and an innate understanding of our guests' needs. She became a mentor to other new employees, a living embodiment of the Ethelgard promise that talent and hard work, not background or connections, were what mattered. The hotel, under new, carefully vetted leadership, quickly became the #1 rated luxury destination in North America, not just for its amenities, but for its service, a service rooted in genuine respect and warmth. The legal battles with Arthur Vance concluded with a resounding victory on all fronts. His conviction for assault was upheld on appeal. The The civil suit was settled for an amount that not only recovered all the embezzled funds, but also included significant punitive damages, all of which I immediately donated to the Dignity and Hospitality Fund. The federal conviction for wire fraud ensured he would remain in prison for the better part of a decade. He became a forgotten footnote, a ghost of a bygone era of corporate malfeasance. Personally, the incident had changed me. I had always been a driven and focused leader, but the raw, public nature of the assault had stripped away the last vestiges of my corporate armor. It reconnected me with the little girl in Detroit, with the burning sense of injustice that had fueled my journey. I became a more vocal, more public advocate for social and economic justice. I testified before Congress about the need for stronger corporate accountability laws. I used my platform not just to sell hotel rooms, but to challenge the status quo and demand a more equitable world. My grandmother, now in her late 80s and living comfortably in a beautiful home I had bought for her years ago, watched the entire saga unfold on the news. When I visited her a few weeks after the gala, she held my face in her wrinkled hands, the same hands that had scrubbed floors for 40 years. "You did it, baby," she said, tears welling in her proud eyes. "You built a house so big and so strong that it could finally protect people like us." In that moment, I knew that every struggle, every rejection, every microaggression, and even the humiliation of that morning in the lobby had been worth it. The Ethelgard Grand was more than a hotel. It was the fulfillment of a promise. It was a testament to the idea that you can build an empire without sacrificing your soul. It was proof that the most powerful force in the world is not hatred or prejudice, but a quiet, unwavering dignity, passed down through generations, that refuses to be broken. The world is full of Arthur Vances, men and women who abuse their slivers of power, who seek to diminish others to make themselves feel large. But the world is also full of grandmothers who teach their grandchildren to dream, and grandchildren who grow up to build new worlds. This story is for them. It is a reminder that the path to justice is often long and difficult, but it is a path worth walking, and sometimes the most profound revolutions begin with a single, quiet act of defiance in a hotel lobby. Thank you for being a part of this journey. The stories we share on Rotero Black Voices are more than just entertainment. They are a testament to the resilience, strength, and brilliance of Black people who refuse to be silenced. If this story moved you, please show your support by hitting the like button, sharing it with your network, and subscribing to the channel. Every engagement helps us amplify these crucial narratives. Join the conversation in the comments below. Let us know about a time you witnessed or experienced a powerful reversal of injustice. Your story matters. Together, we are writing a new chapter, one where every voice is heard, and every person is treated with the dignity they deserve. Thank you for watching.